It is not the most watched race in Delaware, but it is the closest on the statewide ballot, the race for state treasurer. Joining this discussion today on the issues in this race, the Republican Colin Bonini and the Democrat Chip Flowers. Gentlemen, welcome. We're going to talk about the issues in this race in a discussion format. Let's get started.
Thanks for having us.
Great.
Both of you have called for major changes to how this office operates, and you both have suggested that the powers of this office need to be expanded, in effect kind of reimagining the office of state treasurer. So in saying that, as you have said, that the office should be a financial watchdog,
right,
are you trying to fit the man to the office rather than finding the right man for the office as it stands?
I would argue that it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think that's a fair question. I mean, I have been the watchdog, as you know, the fiscal watchdog in my time in the Senate. But I had to tell you, with our unprecedented financial situation we have in Delaware, and we're the third most expensive state per person in the entire country, we are looking at just our neighbors, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, et cetera, are just in very difficult financial situations in their state budgets. If we don't get a hold of our finances here in Delaware soon, we're going to be in the exact same situation they are. I think the treasurer, in my reimagining, thank you, it's a good word, a reimagining of the state treasurer is absolutely make that position, the watchdog position, to let people bring transparency and accountability to the entire state budgeting process. And I think if you do that, you'll start changing the behavior of the General Assembly and the governor, and we'll be able to get our finances in order.
Well, Mr. Flowers, one of the expanded
Yes.
responsibilities that you cite is a call for economic growth. Does that not overstep, though, the bounds of the office? I mean, that's the role of the Delaware Economic Development Office. That's the role of those watching finances is the Delaware Economic and Financial Advisory Council. There are positions in place to do what you're saying you would like to see the office do.
I think, and thank you, Nancy, that was a great question, because I think that we need to get back to a government that cooperates with the various different departments and agencies. Everyone elected in the state of Delaware has a duty to be out there finding jobs and creating jobs for the state of Delaware and growing our economy. The treasurer is the right person to be helping doing this. Like the U.S. Treasury Department, the treasurer is responsible for managing the inflow and outflow of money. And by using our investment strategy, we can actually create jobs. For example, we can simply deposit money in banks and require banks to lend to more Delaware businesses, particularly in times of a down economic climate. We need a treasurer's office that's focusing on doing certain things that other treasurer's offices are doing, and one of which is economic policy. We need to be providing key strategic guidance to the General Assembly so they can make the key decisions that they need to make to grow our economy. The treasurer is not the fiscal watchdog. That's the auditor's role. Rather, the treasurer's job is to do economic policy, treasury service, investment management, and all those key components that we need to get done in order to get ourselves out of this current economic climate.
Both of you, do you think the office isn't working?
May I jump in, Nancy?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think Chip and I don't agree on a lot, but I do think we both agree
on this point.
Expanded role. I wouldn't say power. I would say the expanded role of the state treasurer's office. I think it is doing a good job in terms of what its minor responsibilities that this current office holder and prior office holders have for it. Just basically a payroll office, and as Chip said, sort of simply an oversight of the investments. But I do think that an expanded role for the treasurer's office is important because this is an elected position. We don't have very many statewide elected positions. I think you have a real opportunity to get a truly independent voice into state government. And I think that's why I very strongly believe this should remain an elected position, and I think it's important.
Yeah, look, the office that currently does check cashing and bond issuance
Right.
and investment services, those are fine and those are key important
Yeah.
functions for the state government. However, if you look at the lessons from the 2008 recession, when 35,000 Delawareans are still currently unemployed, what you see is you see a hole that there was no kind of point person in our state government that was really in charge of economic data, or evaluating economic data, looking at that data. You know, the Delaware Financial Advisory Council, they just provide data to the General Assembly so they can make the state budget. But where is the office in our state government that looks at these numbers for consumers, for businesses? And that's what this treasurer's office has to do. That's why we're failing. So it's not a slight to Governor Markell, because when he was there, it was a different economic climate. But I think we have to learn lessons from the 2008 recession that's going to be really talking about getting this economy moving and how can the treasurer's office play a role in
if
doing
I
it.
were a voter, I would be confused because it seems to me
And you are a voter.
that we
Please
know
don't be confused.
exactly what this job is supposed to do, which, as you both have described.
Right.
So am I correct to say kind of the bookkeeper for the state?
I think that's fair. It has more responsibility as well. I think Chip did a very good job summarizing responsibility. Also oversees the investments and also the bookkeeper, payroll, all those kind of things. But I think because it's an elected position and because, as Chip mentioned, there are opportunities here to grow the role. I think we should. I don't think the chances of getting an truly independent voice is important.
If you were when either one of you is elected to this office, are you not asking for a fundamental change that would have to be supported by the state legislature, by the governor? We're talking about rewriting a job description from bookkeeper to what sounds like a senior vice president. Well, if it were in corporate terms.
Nancy, and I think what happened is, I put forth a plan, and most of the items in my plan don't require legislative approval. I think what has happened is that we have, which happened as the Rosnicki administration, when the General Assembly, I think, was a little overzealous in stripping a lot of those powers from the Treasurer's office.
You were overzealous?
I know, go figure, Colin. I know,
the General Assembly being
right.
overzealous.
So I think what has happened is that we need to look back and say, wait a minute. We have this very important office that is simply doing payroll function, bond issuing, and investments. How can we realign this office to compete in a competitive economy in the 21st century? So I think it's not so much about whether or not it can't be done. It needs to be done.
Well, I think you both agree on this point, so let's move on to something.
If I may,
quickly.
just real quickly, I do not envision expanding the office at all, and I'm not talking about expanding the official powers, which is why I did want to take that word away from you. The current treasurer and all prior can absolutely create the transparency and accountability today. You just need someone in the office willing to do it.
Okay. Why treasurer? Why now?
Great question. Well, I think right now in this critical economic climate that we have, Nancy, I think that my financial background as a small business owner, my background in economics, my law business degree, and my degree in government, as well as my successful business, I think I have something to offer to the people of Delaware. I think this is an important office that has been underutilized. And again, not to slight my predecessors in that office, but I think this is a critical point in the history of this state. With 35,000 people unemployed, we need to revamp this office. And as Colin said, neither one of us want to talk about really growing the size of government. In fact, I think both of us agree that we need to reduce the size of government. However, we need an effective treasurer that really has a business background, the financial experience to get this economy moving and work with Wall Street, the banks, other treasurer's office, and make sure that people are getting a fair deal on what needs to happen as far as getting jobs and getting credit and getting those critical financial elements of their lives back in order.
Why treasurer? Why now?
We're spending too much money. Delaware has a spending problem, not a revenue problem. And I look at the future, and I don't like it if we don't get our financial house in order. And the state treasurer's office is a state office dealing with state government. Someone in state government has to stand up and say enough. You've got to stop spending the money. You've got to get the money out of the government and into the private sector, the job-creating sector. I really believe, in my heart of hearts, the treasurer can be the point person on that. And that's my message. I'm pretty excited about it.
But the history of this office.
The history, right.
Right.
Is it's a stepping stone. And we have to just look at Tom Carper, Jack Markell, Mary Jornlin. Anyone who's held this office has either successfully moved on to another elected position or has failed in doing so.
Well,
So, because it is an
Forget
office
that part, they failed in doing so.